Going around corners on projects can sometimes leave your corner stitch looking more obvious compared to the rest of your stitching. In this course I'll be teaching you how to go around corners on leather projects, how to hand stitch around the project, arriving at where you started. Without further ado, let's begin this course. When using your pricking iron, you have two options of going around the corner. You'll be stitching this way. The first option is having the vertical pricking iron line going into the corner. The second option is having the horizontal pricking iron line going into the corner. I'll stitch these and show you what it looks like. This one here is with the pricking iron on the horizontal line going into the corner. On this one here, this is the vertical pricking iron line going into the corner. Out of the two, I prefer this one here, the horizontal pricking iron line going into the corner. Because as you can see on this one here, you can see that slant from the pricking iron. You can use this option on your leather goods. I'm going to show you another option using a round awl. With the second option, what we're going to do is we'll be stitching this way, and we're going to be using our pricking irons this way. We're going to get this tooth and get it into the corner. We're then going to mark with the pricking iron, and then what we're going to do is line up this tooth here with where that second tooth of that pricking iron mark was. Making sure that the pricking iron teeth are about 1 millimeter from the crease line and that the teeth of the pricking iron are straight. Then get your rubber or nylon hammer, and then we're going to go through the leather. Just mark there. And I'll just switch to a 5 tooth just because the 10 tooth will run into these other ones. And again, what we'll do is we'll use the pricking iron to mark that corner. We'll then move to where that second mark was, and we'll go through with the pricking iron. Mark the corner here. What you might notice is that there is a bit of a gap here between that pricking iron tooth. And what you can do is just see where that middle pricking iron tooth ends up on both sides. Then you can just get an awl and make a hole roughly in the middle. And what you want to do is just make sure that the awl is angled like the pricking iron. So you can just see how the pricking iron is, and then go through the middle of the leather. Now this is optional. You can either leave it how it is, or you can just get an awl and go through. And that's how you can connect two pricking irons if the holes don't line up. Now onto this corner mark here. You'll notice that the pricking irons, as we stitch, the thread will go from bottom to top, bottom to top, bottom to top, all the way along. When it gets to this corner here, the thread here is going to go from bottom to top. And then as you can see here, on this pricking iron here, these slants here, you can see the faint slant here. The thread will want to go from here, bottom to top, with this pricking iron slant. Now here, we'll go from bottom to top. And what we're going to do is we're going to just get the round awl, and we're going to aim to make the hole at the top where this pricking iron mark is. Because we want the pricking iron to go from bottom to top, and then angle from here to here. What we'll do is get our awl, and we're going to aim for the top of this pricking iron mark. Keep the leather flat and then push through. As you've gone through the leather, you just want to make sure that the awl is directly straight because we don't want to come out on an angle. Then you can apply a bit more pressure. And then slowly go through. We'll then see the opposite side. Now you don't want to push the awl too far through because as you can see, the awl tapers very heavily. What you can do is just flip the leather over and then go through on this side here, and that will just even out the hole on the opposite side. Now we'll stitch this. When you get to this corner hole here, all you're going to do is just treat it like you would with a slanted hole. Right needle goes above the thread, cast over, and then pull through on an angle. Then you can just rotate this over, and then you can just begin stitching like normal. As you can see, this is what it looks like when you use a round awl in the corner. As you can see, where we marked here, where we went through with the awl, you can see there's two small stitches there. So it's up to you whether you want to mark a awl hole there or just leave it and have one larger stitch. Of course, when you're stitching, you're going to notice every little mistake you make, and having a small two stitches here, it's not really a big deal. In regards to the round hole here, you just want to make sure that you mark that hole in line with where the stitch angles so that you have an accurate similar angle on the stitch as it goes into the corner. As you can see on this one here, this is marked with a round hole, but the hole is not angled down in line where that pricking iron slant would go. And as you can see, this stitch here is more straight. That's just one thing to be cautious of when you are using a round hole. Just make sure that that hole is in line with that pricking iron so that you can get a nice angled stitch here. Out of the two, you can either use this one or this one. You don't want to be using the vertical pricking iron line because you'll have that little slit there from the pricking iron. And of course, this one here doesn't look as aesthetic compared to this one and this one. Now what you're going to do is take what you learnt here, and doing this is optional. You don't actually have to do this. This is just mainly for a tutorial purpose. With that said, what you're going to do is take what I've shown you in here and apply onto this piece of leather. And you can choose either the round hole method or the horizontal pricking iron going into the corner method. And you can do it on this piece of leather here. What I'm going to do on this piece is the round hole method, but you're more than welcome to use that horizontal pricking iron method if you like. The first thing you need to know is what direction you're going to be stitching. For this piece of leather, we're going to be stitching in this direction. This is important because we need to make sure that the right corner is going to be a slanted pricking iron or a round hole. And that's the benefit, because every right corner, whether it's a slanted pricking iron hole or a round hole, is going to be in the right corner. So look at your piece, we're going to be stitching in this direction. So every right corner, so on this piece here, right corner, right corner, right corner, right corner, and back to the start, right corner, is going to be with a pricking iron tooth or a round awl. To start off with, what we're going to do is we're going to get our pricking iron, and when we use our pricking iron, we're going to be going vertically down. So technically, this is going to be the right side. So you just need to make sure that because we'll be using our pricking iron going down, we don't want that pricking iron going into the corner vertically. Simply get your pricking iron and place the tooth in the corner. If you are using the horizontal pricking iron tooth going into the corner, you can simply get your rubber or nylon hammer and go through the leather. Since I'll be using the round hole method, we'll simply just mark the leather and then go back to that second pricking iron mark and then simply go through the leather. And then mark with the pricking iron, then get the round awl, and what you want to do is just aim for the top of that pricking iron mark, and then go through. As we're approaching this corner, this pricking iron tooth doesn't line up. And if we go back one, it's about here. And as you can see, we're getting quite crammed. What we'll do is we're going to move the pricking iron back on the third hole, and then we'll punch through. I'm then going to get the pricking iron, and we're going to mark the corner, go back to this second mark, and then punch through. And get our pricking iron and then mark that corner. Get the round awl. Now, it doesn't really matter whether your pricking irons end up perfectly on this piece of leather, because this piece of leather is just mainly to get the techniques of going around the corner. Making the corners line up perfectly with the pricking iron, we're going to discuss that more in course 8 on pattern making. But for now, we're just going to use what we have, but this will give you a great opportunity in case you run into problems like these on your leather projects. With our pricking iron, we're going to see where this tooth ends up. And as you can see, it ends up there. And then with this corner hole, it ends up there. Again, ends up there. Here, it ends up there. We're then going to get our awl, and we're going to get the correct angle of that stitch hole. We're then going to place it roughly in the middle, and then go through. And then made our own little stitch hole. And as you can see, it's quite identical to the rest of the stitch holes. We're then going to use our pricking irons along the leather again. And then to finish the stitch holes, what we're going to do is just see where the pricking iron lines would line up. And as you can see right here, these are very, very close to this hole here. So what we'll do is we'll move back 2 and then go through. And then we'll see where the pricking iron tooth ends up using this line here, and then using the corner hole here. Get the awl blade, get the shape, and then line up roughly in the middle. And then go through. And then what you can do is just flip over and then just open up some of these round holes that you made. And now you're ready for stitching. Now, with this piece of leather here, we're going to be starting from one point and end up where we started. Now, I don't recommend actually starting the stitch in the middle of the project. The reason is that when someone looks at the project, their eyes are going to be more so drawn in the middle of the stitches. And if someone looks at this project and then you have started the stitch here, it's not going to be symmetrical to this side here, because you're going to have some 2 back stitches, well technically forward stitches on this side here. So then this side is not going to be symmetrical to this side. Now that's just more for an aesthetic purpose. What I like to do is I like to start the stitches around about off, not exactly in the corner, but just off from the corner. I'm not a big fan of starting the stitches in the corner, especially on an item such as this where the stitch is going to go around. I like to start the stitch just off from the corner. So that's just one thing to know. Of course, it's up to you whether you want to start the stitch in the middle, but personally for me, just because eyes are naturally drawn to the middle, you don't want to have your back stitches / extra forward stitches showing, because it's not going to be symmetrical when someone looks at a piece. Obviously that's not a big deal, it's just mainly for aesthetics purposes. That's why I like to have the start of the stitch and the end of the stitch roughly just after the corner. For the thread, we're going to have 1, 2, 3 for the top, 1, 2, 3 for the bottom, and for both sides, 1, 2, 3, and then for the other side, 1, 2, 3, and then for the excess I like to have, which is about this much, 1, 2, and then for the amount of thread for the threading of the needles, which will be about this much, 1, 2, and that's the thread that we're going to use for this piece of leather. Then get your clippers, clip the thread, and we're going to wax this thread and then thread the needles. What we're going to do is we're going to go from the 4th hole, 1, 2, 3, 4, go through, even up the needles, and we're going to use that to even up the threads. And I'll be evening up the threads this way. Now what we're going to do is we're going to stitch forward all the way around, and we're not going to do any back stitches. Once we stitch all the way around, we're simply going to stitch past this point twice. Now to begin, simply just going to stitch normal. And we'll be stitching with a cast. If you notice your threads starting to twist up, what you can do is simply just let the threads hang off the edge of your bench or your desk and then let them untangle themselves, or you can just simply help untangle them by going like that. And this will just allow the threads to untangle, and then you can go back to hand stitching and not have the threads twist up on you. This is more common when you're stitching long pieces and you have a long length of thread, because constantly going in and out through the stitch holes will start to twist up the thread. This is more common, however, on linen thread. And then to finish the stitch, what we're going to do is we'll just do 2 stitches over the original stitch that we started. And it's going to be, what we're going to do is we're going to aim to get the thread above these 2. What we're going to do now is we're going to do 2 more stitches, and then we're going to end the stitch. We're going to make sure that this needle here passes above the thread on this side here, and also above the thread on this side here. Then going to stitch, and then you can just help the thread go above the thread on both sides. And then we'll do 1 more. Cast over. And then what you want to do is just pull on the thread and then clip with your thread clippers. Do the exact same to the opposite side. You can also just get a little cloth and then remove the excess, and then just go back and then just work in that PVA. And now you've completed this course. That's it for this course. If you have any questions, feel free to get in contact with me through email or social media. Be sure to enjoy your leather crafting.